The sun beat down on the parched earth. Dust devils danced across the plains. Cacti stood like sentinels, their shadows stretching long and thin. Tumbleweeds, driven by the wind, bounced across the cracked ground. This was the Wild West, a land of unforgiving beauty, a place where life was as harsh as the landscape itself. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the occasional hawk's cry. The heat shimmered, creating mirages that danced on the horizon. Here, under the relentless sun, stories of grit and glory unfolded. Stories of cowboys and outlaws, of lawmen and renegades. Stories etched in the very soul of the West. A lone rider emerged from the haze. His Stetson, weathered and worn, was pulled low over his eyes. A bandana covered his face, shielding him from the dust. His eyes, piercing blue, scanned the horizon. He was a man of few words. His face a roadmap of hard-lived years. His name was Cole, and he rode a chestnut mare named Whiskey. She was as tough as the land they traversed, her coat the color of desert sand. Cole trusted Whiskey with his life. They moved as one, two souls bound by the dangers of the West. They rode toward Sundown Creek, a town whispered to be a haven for outlaws. Sundown Creek was a town like many others that dotted the vast expanse of the West. Wooden buildings lined the dusty street. The air hung heavy with the smell of sweat, whiskey, and fear. Cole rode in slowly, his hand resting near the Colt Peacemaker on his hip. The townsfolk watched him with wary eyes. He dismounted in front of the sheriff's office, the sound of his boots on the wooden sidewalk echoing in the silence. The air crackled with anticipation. A group of men, their faces hardened by the sun and their past deeds, stood near the saloon. They were the notorious Dalton Gang, and their leader, Jake Dalton, was a man who knew the price of everything and the value of nothing. Cole pushed through the swinging doors of the Golden Snake Saloon. The smell of stale beer and cheap whiskey hit him like a fist. Inside, men crowded around tables, gambling and drinking. A piano player tinkled out a mournful tune in the corner. He ordered a whiskey, his eyes never leaving the Daltons. They were laughing, boasting about their latest heist. Cole felt a familiar anger rise within him. They were the reason he was here. They had taken something precious from him, something irreplaceable, and he was going to make them pay. The saloon doors swung open, and a young woman hurried in. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with dirt and tears. She rushed to Cole, her voice trembling as she spoke. They took my brother," she gasped. "The Daltons, they have him!" Cole felt a cold fury settle in his gut. The Daltons had crossed a line this time. He would make them regret the day they decided to terrorize this town. He would be the hand of justice, swift and unforgiving. He finished his whiskey, the glass cold in his hand. His time for talk was over. It was time for action. Cole burst out of the saloon, his hand hovering over his Colt. "Get out here, Daltons!" he roared, his voice echoing down the street. The townsfolk scattered like mice, seeking cover. The Daltons emerged from the saloon, their hands resting on their guns. Jake Dalton laughed, a cruel, humorless sound. "You got a death wish, stranger?" he drawled. "You know why I'm here," Cole said, his voice low and dangerous. "Let the boy go." "Boys are insurance," Jake sneered. "Now get lost." Cole drew his Colt, the metal gleaming in the sunlight. "This town ain't big enough for the likes of you," he said. And with that, the street erupted in gunfire. Cole raced out of town, the Daltons hot on his trail. He urged Whiskey into a full gallop, her hooves pounding the dry earth. They rode through a maze of canyons, the sun casting long shadows that danced across the rock walls. Bullets whistled past his ears. The sound of gunfire echoed off the canyon walls, creating a deafening roar. He could hear the Daltons closing in, their shouts carried on the wind. But Cole knew these canyons like the back of his hand. He had a plan, a dangerous gamble that could end the chase once and for all. Cole pushed Whiskey harder, urging her through a narrow passage. He could see the end of the canyon ahead, the sunlight streaming through the opening. He reined Whiskey in, hiding behind a rocky outcrop. He could hear the Daltons approaching, their horses' hooves pounding in the narrow passage. He took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment of truth. He had to end this here, for his sake and for the sake of the town. He drew his Colt, the metal cool against his palm. He waited for the Daltons to ride into his trap. As the Daltons rounded the bend, Cole stepped out, his Colt blazing. The sound of gunfire shattered the silence of the canyon. One by one, the Daltons fell from their saddles, their cries echoing off the canyon walls. Jake Dalton, his face contorted in rage, was the last one standing. He raised his gun, but Cole was faster. His bullet found its mark, and Jake crumpled to the ground. Silence descended upon the canyon, broken only by the sound of the wind whistling through the rocks. Cole rode back to Sundown Creek, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. He returned the young boy to his sister, their tearful reunion a testament to the justice he had delivered. He didn't stay for their thanks. Cole was a man of action, not words. He mounted Whiskey, tipped his hat in farewell, and rode off into the sunset. His legend, like the echoes of gunfire in the canyon, would live on in the whispers of the townsfolk, a reminder that even in the untamed West, justice could prevail.